here, well over 100, so that's absolutely fantastic. I'd imagine that the thought of looking at nice sunny dragonfly photos on a day like this, where we've still got lots of snow and it's windy and it's starting to rain, is probably a bit of light relief. So the format of the morning, as Craig said, I'll talk about its introduction to Dragonflies of Scotland. I'm not actually able to cover all of the species because I think that would be a bit too much in one presentation. But if people would like to learn more about the species that I haven't covered, then there's the possibility that we could do another presentation. So I'm basically going to cover, in the presentation, I cover a bit about the ecology of dragonflies, their life cycles and so on. I'll be looking at the species that are found in the local area. So the last talk I did to a group was probably mid-March, and it was to last year, and it was to or early March maybe, the Scottish Ornithologists Club group in Dundee. So I thought that was probably a good presentation to use as a basis for this one. So we're going to be looking at the species that are found sort of in the Dundee, Angus, East Perthshire area, with a few others added in. So these are sort of like the 10, 11, 12 common species that are found in most of Scotland. We do have more species in the south and fewer species in the north, but the Highlands do have some interesting species that are just found there as well. And then we'll be looking a bit at recording, how you can help dragonflies, and then I'll be passing back to Craig, who's going to play we've got the BDS now has a YouTube channel, and we have a short video, probably about 10 minutes long, that Andrea and I produced last Dragonfly Week, last July, and that's a few ID tips for how to help ID larvae. And then we'll have about half an hour, I would imagine. I think the presentation will take about 40, 45 minutes to answer the questions afterwards. So that's that, and I shall go into the presentation. Fingers crossed that this works. Right, introduction to dragonflies. Is that working, Craig?
Yeah, we can see that. Thank you.
Okay, fabulous. Okay, right. So an introduction to Scotland's dragonflies. As you know, my name's Daniele Muir. I'm one of the Scotland officers for the British Dragonfly Society. I cover the conservation side of things, and Andrea, who works alongside me, we're both 2 days a week. She covers the outreach and new project side of things. I also I run Perthshire Wildlife, which revolves around mostly beaver tours during the summer here in Perthshire, but also some swift conservation, and I run a small native wildflowers nursery called Celtica Wildflowers as well. So they keep me busy. So the role as Scotland officer is mostly, the main aim is to raise awareness of dragonflies and their conservation. And as a result of that, we want to involve as many people as possible in dragonfly surveying and recording. And we have a number of dragonfly hotspots across Scotland. We've got 10 of them from Aberdeen in the north to Carlaverock in Dumfries and Galloway in the south. And these are excellent. They're great for carrying out conservation and outreach work and getting people involved with dragonflies there. And I'll be talking a bit more about hotspots later on. I also work on key sites across Scotland with Pat Batty, who some of you may know. She's our absolutely fantastic Scottish recorder, and we have a number of really keen volunteers as well. So key sites are sites that we work closely with landowners to improve the sites for rare species. So they're sites that have species such as Northern Damselfly or Azure Hawker, Northern Emerald. So we'll be looking at them a little bit as well. So during a normal year, unfortunately, we weren't able to do anything last year, as you can imagine. I would normally run a programme of guided walks, talks and training events, usually around the hotspots, but at other sites as well. Not SNH anymore. Nature Scot funds my post for Northern Damselfly and Azure Hawker conservation, so I'll talk a little bit about that too. And this year we are having an online, a virtual dragonfly conference on the 17th of April. So everybody's welcome to attend that, whether they're members of the BDS or not. So if you keep an eye on our social media, or check the website, you'll know when the Eventbrite link is up and running. So it'd be great to see lots of you there. So starting off with the basics of dragonflies. What is a dragonfly? Well, dragonflies are insects. They've got a head, a thorax, an abdomen. They've got 6 legs. They have, the majority of dragonflies have absolutely beautiful colours. They've got a very interesting life cycle, which we'll go into in a bit more detail. They are predators, both as adults and as larvae, and they're useful to science in that they're a clean water indicator. So the larvae need clean water to live in. I mean, we tend to think of dragonflies as these beautiful, brightly coloured, jewel-like insects that fly around on sunny days, but in actual fact, they only live for a few weeks as an adult, and they spend the majority of their life underwater, and they can live for 5 or even 6 years underwater as a larva, and then they'll just their adult stage of their life only lasts for 1 to 8 weeks. And they have been around for a very, very long time. They've been around since before the dinosaurs, 300 million years. And their design hasn't changed that much in that time. They're a lot smaller than they used to be. They used to have a 3-foot wingspan. So that might be quite scary to meet one of them. But because they're so well adapted to what they do, their design hasn't changed that much in all those millions of years. So they belong to the order Odonata, which means toothed jaw. And damselflies have equal wings, and they're known as Zygoptera. Dragonflies have unequal wings, which are called Anisoptera. And when we talk about dragonflies, we're talking about both dragonflies and damselflies. So they belong to the group Odonata. So we're talking about Odonata. And in Scotland, we have 23 species resident and breeding here. It's likely that there are more, but this is what we have officially recorded. So that 23 species might seem quite a lot to get to grips with, but we can break that down into 9 damselfly species and 14 dragonfly species. And we've got 4 more species probably breeding, brown hawker, and in actual fact, we got quite a lot of information about brown hawkers in a location near Hamilton this year. So we'll be looking for evidence of breeding to add them to the list. Migrant hawker, broad-bodied chaser, and black-tailed skimmer. 2 regular migrant species, yellow-winged darter and red-veined darter. And we've got 3 quite special species that are found only within Scotland and the UK. The northern damselfly, the Azure Hawker, and the northern emerald dragonflies. So just a quick bit about those Scottish species. So the first one's the northern damselfly, and the northern damselfly is found in fairly shallow sedge-fringed lochs and ponds, and it's got 3 strongholds sort of on the edge of the Cairngorms. So not far from where I live, near Pitlochry, we have a stronghold there. There's a stronghold in Strathspey and also in Deeside. So they've got quite an interesting distribution, and I've always been quite interested. I'm very keen to find some northern damselflies in Angus that would help link the Perthshire and the Deeside population, but unfortunately that hasn't happened yet. But they're quite easy to identify. If you look closely, I don't know, can you see as I'm moving the mouse? Can you see that, Craig?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, right, great. So when it comes to identifying blue damselflies, one of the easiest things to look for is this marking at the top of the abdomen here. So here we have a sort of, it's almost like an ace of spades shape, and it also has 2 black marks along the side at the top of the abdomen there. They have 2 blue segments on segment 8 to 9, and then little black spots here. So they're quite weak flyers. They tend to stay among the sedges at the edge of the pond as well. They're pea green underneath, pea green eyes underneath. So you can see how green the eye is on the male there. And then the females are this lovely pea green and black colour as well. And this is one of our top sites for northern damselfly. This is at Castle Fraser in Aberdeenshire. It's an NTS site, and we've been working quite closely with the rangers there for a number of years. And this is a northern damselfly larva. So the next species is the northern emerald dragonfly, and this is a dragonfly that's found in sort of sphagnum-filled pools and runnels. It likes a bit of movement to the water, but not a huge amount. And these are a couple of photos that I took in Glencanich. I don't know if many of you know the area at all, but just coming out of the village of Canich, maybe about half a mile up the road, there's a lovely pond on your left-hand side, which I was there in October, and it was full of black darters and southern hawkers and a few damselflies, and it was absolutely wonderful. But just on the other side of the road, there is an area of, you wouldn't think you get dragonflies in there at all. It's basically just a number of sphagnum-y pools. And this is where I found quite a few northern emeralds. And this northern emerald larva on the left, it's just about to emerge. And you can see the sphagnum in the pool there. So I watched it climbing out of the sphagnum, climbing up onto this, these sedges here. And you can see the larval skin there. So the dragonfly emerged, and I watched it for, I don't know, an hour or so as it pumped the fluids through its body and just changed into, well, didn't change, but I saw it become an adult dragonfly, and it flew off after about an hour and a half. So absolutely amazing thing to see. And the Azure Hawker, this is another one found only in Scotland and the UK. This is at the top of the Dragonfly Twitchers list, I think. People are really keen to find an Azure Hawker. Again, they're found in sphagnum-filled bog pools, so they're found on peatlands, and they're quite a small hawker, but the males have this lovely light blue colour. And there's a really nice photo from Peter Van Dome. So that was taken near Bridge of Groody, near Loch Marie. Some of you might know that, and it's a fantastic spot to see them. I have to say that the adult Azure Hawker still eludes me. I started working for the VDS in 2013, and I've still not seen an adult Azure Hawker. So it's one that I hope to see as soon as possible. So a bit about the Dragonfly life cycle. Well, the dragonflies do have an amazing life cycle. I'm going to go into the next picture first. So dragonflies are unique in that the males have secondary sex organs just underneath the top of the abdomen here. So when it comes to mating, the males have these claspers at the end of their abdomen, and they hold the female behind the eyes or on the neck, and encourage the female to lift the end of her abdomen up to these secondary sexual organs here, where he's placed a sperm packet. So she picks that up, that fertilizes the eggs. So after they've mated, the female goes and lays the eggs, and we'll see a bit more about that in just a second. She lays her eggs in or close to the water or in vegetation at the water. The larva or the nymph hatches out, and it will be underwater for anything from under a year to 5 or 6 years. And then the dragonfly emerges from its larval case and becomes an adult. So we can have a look at that picture there. So that's called incopulation or incop, and they make a sort of love heart. So it's very, very romantic. Love heart as they're mating. So the female dragonfly, she'll lay her eggs on or inside plants, moss, wood, and the water. And she does that using a structure called the ovipositor, which is a sharp blade-like structure. You can't really see it in this picture here, but she's using that to cut little holes into, I don't know, into the moss here, and she'll lay her eggs in there. Sometimes the male dragonfly guards the female dragonfly while she lays her egg. So in damselflies, the male's usually still attached to the female. So what he's doing is he's looking out for other damselflies that might want to mate with her. And also he'll be looking out for predators from in the water as well. So if a fish or another predator comes along and tries to get the female, he'll be able to fly off and lift her out of the water. Some species lay their eggs by themselves. The hawkers and the darters, they lay their eggs chasers by themselves. The males aren't attached. So once the dragonfly larva hatches out, the egg, it's obviously its skin is quite hard. It's its exoskeleton, so that doesn't stretch. And as it grows bigger, it has to grow a new, bigger skin underneath the old one, and it sheds that skin as it gets bigger. So, and each of these stages is called an instar, and they can shed their skin. They can have up to 13 or 14 instars throughout their time underwater as larvae. So when it's ready to be an adult, the larva climbs out of the water onto an emerging plant usually, but sometimes it'll climb out onto the bank, sometimes it'll climb out onto heather or sphagnum, and this larval skin splits down the back, and the dragonfly or damselfly climbs out, and this is what is called emergence. And we can see this is a northern emerald here. So the first stage where the top of the body comes out, and then the rest of the abdomen. They then have to dry out and pump up their wings before they can fly off, and the body hardens, the colours develop, and this can take up to a few hours. Obviously, they're quite vulnerable at this stage, and all sorts of predators will find them and eat them, birds, ants, just anything that spots them. They've got quite a soft exoskeleton, so they're easy to eat. And after a few hours, the dragonfly is ready to fly away. So this is a male northern emerald, and you can see the larval case there. So it's amazing. I mean, it never fails to amaze me when I see this happening, that this case, which is maybe about 2.5 centimeters long, it produces this. And this comes out of the larval case, which is probably about 8 centimeters long, 6 or 7 centimeters long, maybe. So they leave their skin behind, obviously, after they've emerged, and the empty skin's called an exuvia. And exuvia they're really important because they're definitive evidence of breeding. So these pictures here on the left, you can see these are common hawker exuviae, and these on the right, they are four-spotted chaser exuviae, and we found these at an old northern damselfly site here in Perthshire. So when it comes to identifying dragonflies, remember we've got 23 species plus here in Scotland. The first thing to do is to break it down into whether it's a damselfly or a dragonfly, and there's 3 or 4 ways to easily tell whether it's a dragonfly or a damselfly. So the first thing is to look at their wings. So when they come to rest, have a look at the wings. If the wings are resting out, so the wings are out at the side, like this picture here at the bottom on the left, then that is a dragonfly. If they have their wings up over the back of the abdomen like this, then that is a damselfly. If you're able to look at the eyes, so dragonflies have huge eyes, and they usually take up most of their head, and they will meet usually in the middle. Damselflies, they have their eyes on either side of the head, a bit like a hammerhead shark. And if you look at their size, damselflies are much smaller than dragonflies. Damselflies are about the size of a matchstick, and dragonflies can be up to about 8 or 9 centimeters long. So they're much bigger and sturdier creatures. In fact, I've had a few people say to me, "Oh, you must be able to tell me what this dragonfly was." It was absolutely huge. It was about well, they would gesture as to what size it is, and people will say, well, it must have been about a 30 centimetre wingspan. So although we don't get 30 centimetre dragonflies with 30 centimetre wingspans here, they do look quite large when they're flying around. And dragonflies have a very strong and purposeful flight. You'll see them sort of patrolling their territories, whereas damselflies have a weaker and more fluttery flight. A bit about the basics of dragonfly anatomy. As we said, they're insects, so they've got a head, a thorax, an abdomen, 6 legs. They've got 4 wings. Their abdomen's split up into 10 segments, and looking at the different colours on the segments is quite a useful way to tell the difference between certainly some species of damselflies. So looking at the local dragonflies here this is the Dundee, sort of the Tayside area. So we've got Dundee at the bottom there. It goes up into the Angus Glens, the Perthshire Glens as well. So you can see we've got quite a few Odonata records. This is from MBN Atlas. And the species that we would find in this area, some of which are on that map, are these 10 here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 species of damselfly and 5 species of dragonfly. So we're going to go through these 10 species and look at the ways to identify them. The one at the bottom, the golden ring dragonfly, I've got an asterisk at because it wasn't in the data from the NBN Atlas, but it will be here. So this is just a diagram, or a picture I should say, looking at some of the things that are very useful for identification. So looking at the markings on the thorax, so on the back and on the side, the markings on the abdomen, the anal appendages, which are basically the male has claspers that he uses to hold on to the female when they're mating. Looking at the wings, looking at if there's colours on the wings. So the arrow here is pointing to, can you see these here? These are called pterostigma, and these are sort of dense clusters of cells. And these different species will have different colours of pterostigma, so they're quite useful to look at as well. Looking at the colour of the face or the fronds and the colour of the eyes, markings on the side of the thorax, if there's any stripes or special colours on the legs, and again, markings on the abdomen and the shape of the anal appendages. Right, so the common blue damselfly is quite a well-named damselfly in that it is very blue. And it's quite a common species. It tends to be found in larger ponds, and it has quite broad shoulder stripes, broad blue shoulder stripes here. If you look at the top of the abdomen, remember when we looked at the northern damselfly, it had an ace of spades shape at the top of the abdomen. Well, the common blue damselfly it's a sort of mushroom-shaped blob. Is about the most. It's quite a good description. So a mushroom-shaped blob here. On the side of the thorax, it has one black stripe. The other blue damselflies have an extra sort of a spur here, and that's worthwhile bearing in mind when it comes to looking at the differences between the blue damselflies. And the common blue has very bright blue segment 8 and 9. So remember, we have 10 segments on the abdomen here. So bright blue 8 and 9. So it's probably the bluest of the damselflies. And when it comes to looking at colours of damselflies, we're really going to concentrate on the males, because males and females, they are usually different coloured. So I would say the males are more obvious to see because they're the ones that are territorial. They're the ones that you'll see at the water bodies waiting for the females to arrive. Also, their colour will change over time. So when they first emerge, it takes a while. It can take up to about 4 days for their adult colours to develop. And as they get older, the colours will change a bit more as well. So I'd advise you to, if you're just starting off with Dragonfly ID, concentrate on the males, get your confidence up with the males, and then we can move on to females and looking at the different colours over different ages. So this is a picture of a male and a female. So this is the female's obviously a different colour. We get green and sort of brown forms of the female common blue, and you can see, so there's no spur here, very blue. You can't really see the mushroom there, but you can see the bright blue segment 8 and 9. So the Azure Damselfly, which you'll initially think is very similar to the common blue, but it does have quite different features. So the Azure Damselfly is one that's found in garden ponds quite a lot. It tends to prefer smaller water bodies than the common blue. And the Azure is one that's really been moving north with climate change. So 20 years ago, it had moved up to about as far as the south of Fife, and now it is up to about the Pitlochry, and it's even coming into the sort of Cairngorms as well. So it's moving north quite speedily, and the Azure Damselfly is quite a generalist damselfly, and is moving into areas where the northern damselfly is, and it's quite likely to be having some impact on northern damselfly numbers. But the way to identify the Azure Damselfly is, well, you can see it's got narrower blue shoulder stripes than the common blue. It has this extra spur on the side of the thorax. And here, where the common blue had the mushroom, the Azure Damselfly has, it's almost like an not an H shape, but almost like a beer glass shape is how it's been described, or a Honda logo is how it's been described as well. It's not quite as blue looking down the abdomen, and when we get to segment 8 and 9, you can see on segment 9 there is almost like a black U shape here. And in one of the books it says, think of the Azure Damselfly as a pool player. So he's got a pint of beer here, he's got a bow tie here, and this is almost like, there's almost like a round dot there, so that's like the pool cue and the pool ball. So that might be one way of helping you to remember it. When I first started getting into dragonflies, my sister had a sort of a light blue coloured Honda, an azure coloured Honda, you could say. So this Honda logo sort of helped me to remember that. So it's just one of the ways of sticking things into your mind. And again, the female's different to the male, and again we have different colour forms for the female, blue and green for the Azure Damselfly. Blue-tailed damselfly is a nice, easy one to identify. It has bright blue segment on segment 8, and the male has this blue-coloured thorax, dark-coloured abdomen, and it's the only species that has a 2-coloured pterostigma, so it's a sort of light grey and darker grey on the pterostigma. The female is different. Has different colour forms. She has pink colour forms, purple, light green, and so on. But you can still tell the dark abdomen and then the blue section, segment 8. The large red damselfly. Well, this is one that's always lovely to see mid-April onwards. It's the first dragonfly that emerges, and as part of my wildflower nursery, I have quite a lot of water plants, and I have 3 or 4 sort of water bodies dotted about where I grow the plants and store the plants. So they're not designed as wildlife habitats, but last spring, this is one of the things that kept me sane during lockdown, I must admit. I had heaps of large red damselflies emerging from my various water bodies, which was absolutely wonderful. It's a nice, easy dragonfly to identify. It's the only red damselfly we have here in Scotland. It's a bright red colour, bright red eyes. So this is a male, mostly red with some black markings. This is a female, so she's mostly red with black markings and some yellow as well. So it's quite easy to differentiate between the males and the females. The emerald damselfly, this is one that emerges later on in the summer. We do tend to have, we have spring species and summer species, and the emerald damselfly comes out sort of late June, emerges late June onwards. So again, it's quite a nice, easy one to identify. It's got this lovely emerald green thorax with some blue colour on it, emerald green abdomen, and then some blue colouring on segment 8 and 9 as well. The female is this lovely sort of bronzy green all over. Now, when we talked about dragonflies have their wings held out to the side and damselflies have their wings held out over the back of the abdomen when they're at rest, of course, there's going to be some exceptions. So this is the emerald damselfly is an exception to that rule. When it's at rest, it holds its wings sort of half in and half out like this. So moving on to the dragonflies. I first became interested in dragonflies when I worked as a seasonal ranger at Crombie Country Park, which was our first ever dragonfly hotspot. It's such a fantastic place to see dragonflies. And the common hawker, it's a great place to see them there. You see them just hawking around the ponds at Heron Pond and Pedeston Ponds. So these are quite big dragonflies. One of our largest dragonfly, maybe about 8 or 9 centimetres long, the body. And they're quite nice, easy ones to identify. They have, this is the male, and he has quite obvious yellow shoulder stripes. One of the giveaways with the common hawker is the leading edge of the dragonfly wing is called the costa, and the common hawker has this lovely golden costa. So you can see that on all 4 of the wings here. He has blue, light blue spots coming all the way down the abdomen, and yellow spots as well. Now the female does look a bit different. She's more brown with yellow spots, but again, you can see the lovely golden costa there. She doesn't have the wide shoulder stripes that the male has. Now I've included the southern hawker here because the southern hawker is a species that's moving up from the north. From the south, but it's also found in the north. It's got quite a strange distribution. It's moving north with climate change, but there's also a cluster in Argyll, and there's a cluster round about Inverness as well. And I saw my first ever southern hawker last, hang on, that's what we're now, 21. We've been in the summer of 19 at our dragonfly hotspot at De Villa in the south of Fife. And I saw a female laying her eggs at one of the ponds there, and we didn't have any sightings of the southern hawker until then. So definitely moving its way up into Fife. I know that they're at Jupiter in Grangemouth, and yeah. So when I was at Cannock in October, there were lots of them in the pool up Glen Cannock. So yeah, quite a strange distribution, but they're going to be here soon. Certainly they'll be in Perthshire fairly soon, but they've got wider shoulder stripes than the common hawker. So they're almost like circles rather than stripes. You can see the costa here. The costa is black rather than golden. And coming down the abdomen, it's more green than yellow. So it's a greeny yellow and darker blue spots. And in the last 2 segments here, in segment 9 and segment 10, those spots are fused, so they're stripes at the end of the abdomen. This is the female here. She does initially look quite similar to the common hawker, but again, no golden costa there along the wing. And again, if you look, you can see that the spots are fused towards the end into almost like stripes. And I've included the emperor dragonfly because this is again one that's heading north with climate change, and we did have a record in 2019 from Forvey. Prior to that, the furthest north that we had records for was Perth, and also at Morton Lochs at Tentsmuir North Fife, which is one of our hotspots. So the emperor's got, this is the male, he's got a bright green thorax, blue and black abdomen, and this is the female, again, green thorax, blue and brown abdomen with this dark stripe coming down the abdomen. So again, that's one to look out for. So he's got quite a sort of straw-coloured costa. That's one to look out for. It's definitely moving its way to the north. Now moving on to the darters, these are quite a bit smaller than the hawkers. They're probably about 4 centimetres long, and they're called darters because they do have preferred perches. So they'll rest on a preferred perch and then dart out and catch their prey, and come back and eat it at their perch, a bit like spotted flycatchers do. And black darters like fairly acidic pools. So again, Crombie is a great place to see them. Flanders moss is as well. And this is the female black darter. So the male is he's mostly black, but he can have some yellow coloration on him as well. He's got this quite distinctive pinched-in waist. A lot of darters have that, whereas the female's much wider because she's got to have the eggs in there. They quite often have this panel of black with 3 spots on the side of the thorax. And the distinctive thing about black darters is they always have this black triangle at the front of the thorax just behind the head. So if you're struggling to tell the difference between maybe a common darter and a black darter, look for that black triangle. If it's there, it's a black darter. Common darters, these are, you'll find common darters in just about every habitat. They can be found in garden ponds. They'll be found in, they can take fairly brackish water actually. So they've got this is the male, he's got a sort of orangey red abdomen. They've got very obvious bright yellow side panels on the side of the thorax, and they've got black legs with white stripes on them. So there are quite a few different darters that are red, not necessarily here in this part of Scotland, but the way to tell the difference is that the common darter has a pale stripe down the legs, which other red coloured darters don't have. And this is the female here. So this is the picture we saw of them in COP earlier on. So the female's more of a sort of olivey brown colour. So you can see that's the yellow side panels there on the male, the sort of orangey red coloured abdomen. And the four-spotted chasers, this is one of my favourites. I took this photograph at our hotspot at Gartcosh Local Nature Reserve in North Lanarkshire, which is a fantastic spot to see all the common species, and they have so many ponds it's quite difficult to get around them. But the four-spotted chaser, sometimes called the flying cigar, it's got this lovely sort of light brown coloured body with the black end to the abdomen. But it's called a four-spotted chaser because it has these extra 1, 2, 3, 4 spots here. And so these are the pterostigma. So all dragonflies have the pterostigma, but it has these extra 4 spots, and it's got quite dark wing bases as well. So telling the difference between a male and a female four-spotted chaser can be quite tricky. Oh, there we go. And the golden ring dragonfly, this is one that I quite often refer to as the hill walker's dragonfly because they like upland burns. So they like fairly fast flowing water, and this is the one that can take 5 or 6 years to get to adulthood because they're quite high up. The water's quite cold. There's fairly low prey availability. So the colder it is and the less food there is, then obviously the longer it takes them to develop. Basically, here. We have damselflies, for example, that will take 2 years to emerge, whereas in the south of England, for example, they might just take 1 year, and in the south of France, there might be more than one emergence. There might be 2 emergences over the year. So back to the golden ringed, a nice easy one to identify. The male and female are very similar. They have bright green eyes. They're black with golden stripes, golden rings. And you quite often find them when you're near fairly fast flowing burns. I'm just going to stop for a drink of water. So hopefully that hasn't bamboozled you too much. I think it's knowing what to look for. And normally I would do this presentation before we go outside and go and have a look at the dragonflies that are around and put our newfound skills to test. So it's going out and finding the animals themselves and looking at whether it's the mushroom shaped marking on the abdomen or the Honda logo, so you can tell the difference between the common blue and the Azure Damselflies. Hopefully once we're able to go back out again, I'll be able to run a few workshops and people can come along and we can put our newfound skills into practice. So just a little bit about Larvae ID. You're about to see a video on that, which will hopefully explain things a bit better. But I'm just showing a few pictures of, this is a damselfly larva. So you can see at the end of the body, it has these 3, they look almost like tails. So these are called the caudal lamellae. And they have a number of functions. They're used to propel them through the water. They're used as secondary gills, so they help to absorb oxygen from the water. And they're also used to distract predators. So let's say there's a fish is very interested in eating this damselfly larva. These are easily detachable. So if the damselfly waves its caudal lamellae around, the fish might focus on that. And basically that will come off and the larva can swim off and survive another day. So damselfly larvae 3 caudal lamellae, 3 tails, 6 legs, and they'll grow up to about 2 centimetres long, approximately. This is a dragonfly larva, and we can split them up into sort of hawker type and the chaser and darter types. So this is a darter. It's covered in lots of hair, and it's got quite a squat body, because they tend to live at the bottom of the pond, and they need to be quite squat so they don't fall down through the detritus. And their bodies are covered in hair because it's quite dark, and the hairs are used as sort of sensors. They can pick up when there's something swimming through the water. So quite rounded and squat, in contrast to the shape of a hawker type. So this was taken at Crombie. This is a common hawker. And they're ambush predators. They'll be lurking in the vegetation, waiting for something to come along. So they can eat large hawker larvae. They can eat newts. They can eat tadpoles. They can eat fairly large prey, small fish even. When they're smaller, they'll eat things like sort of small water beetle larvae. They'll eat like water worms and so on. So pretty much anything that they can catch. So you can see on this picture here, these are its wing buds. So the wings are developing in there. So quite a long, slim body, quite torpedo shaped, and the 6 legs. You can just see the eyes there. So you can sort of make out the shape of the adult dragonfly from that. So a bit about our dragonfly hotspots. As I said earlier on, we've got 10 dragonfly hotspots across the country, from Aberdeen down through into Dumfries and Galloway. They're great places to easily see dragonflies. There's easy access around the site, and they were chosen to be close to communities for involvement in various dragonfly events and conservation. So this is a list of them all. From Crombie was our first one, Morton Lochs in Fife, Gartcosh in North Lanarkshire, Greenhead Moss in North Lanarkshire, Portmilk Moss in Perth and Kinross, Scotstoun Muir in Aberdeen, De Villa Forest in Fife, Flanders Moss near Stirling, Curlaverock in Dumfries and Galloway, and our newest one, which we launched last year, is Argotty Red Kites near Doon. So they're all fantastic places to go and visit and discover more about dragonflies post-lockdown. So just a quick look at one of our dragonfly hotspots, Flanders Moss, which isn't too far from Stirling. It's one of the largest raised bogs left in Scotland, and it's an absolutely beautiful site. It's a fantastic place to go and photograph dragonflies. It's a fantastic place to go and photograph lizards. You'll quite often see both dragonflies and lizards sunbathing on the boardwalk. So there's a boardwalk that you can follow round, keeps you off the sphagnum. This lizard, I think, must be a pregnant female. It looks, I should say, it looks very wide. And it's been a great place for us to run various training events, guided walks and workshops and so on, and also to do some practical work. So Flanders Moss has undergone quite a bit of peatland restoration work to try and keep the water in the peat, obviously for climate change reasons as well as for conservation reasons. And one of the things we've been doing there, working in conjunction with the site managers, Nature Scott, who've been absolutely fabulous, is digging some or blocking up ditches and digging some dragonfly pools, so that we have pools that are at various stages of succession, which are good for different species of dragonfly. So this is a day with some volunteers doing lots of great work, digging a number of pools for dragonflies, which have since all been used. Key sites. Our key sites are primarily sites which are important for rare species. So we work with the land manager to improve the habitat for these species. And ideally, we want to include monitoring to make sure that that management is being effective. So this is you'll be able to tell now that this is a northern damselfly here. It has It's a male. You can just see the sort of pea green eyes underneath here. So this is at Logie Rate, not far from Pitlochry. So we have a number of priority species these are the ones that we're working with on key sites. So the Northern Damselfly and White-faced Darter are nationally important. Vulnerable are the Azure Hawker and the Brilliant Emerald. And near threatened are the Variable Damselfly and the Northern Emerald. And this is just a sort of sample of our spreadsheet. And some of our key sites, Castle Fraser, Aberdeenshire, Logie Rate, Myers and Perthshire. I won't go through them all. Forestry Commission have been really, really helpful. They have 47 sites with rare species. Carrowra Estate's one of our newest, and I'll talk about Carrowra Estate quite shortly. How are we doing for time, Craig?
We're doing all right. It's 5 to 11 at the moment.
Okay. Right, so just a bit about the Azure Hawker work, which is funded by Nature Scott. We have quite a few new sites which continue to be found due to very keen recorders. And we're working with various landowners to carry out surveys to find out where the Azure Hawkers are, and also carrying out training for staff and volunteers. So a few of our Azure Hawker key sites are at Benny National Nature Reserve, Carrowra Estate, and a new one is the Woodland Trust site at Shieldig. And this is Tansley Bog at Benny, where I carried out some training a couple of years ago. And although it's a good site for Azure Hawker, we didn't find any adult Azure Hawkers, but we did find White-faced Darter, which is the one on the right-hand side, again, which is quite a rare species. And we did find emerging Northern Emerald Dragonflies, which was fantastic. So they're managing to elude me, these Azure Hawkers. Certainly as adults anyway. Pat and I went to Carrowra Estate, which is one of our newest key sites. We got the train, the Fort William train to Rannoch Muir, got off at Carrowra Station and carried out a survey for Azure Hawkers. And we managed to find hundreds of Azure Hawker larvae in these bog pools. So you can see they're quite shallow pools, full of sphagnum. This is an Azure Hawker larva here. You can see that it's probably one of the most distinctive things is the pale spots coming down the back here. And we have in here lots of Azure Hawker larvae, but we also, you might be able to see this one here is quite stripy, so that's a common hawker larva, and I think this one here's a common hawker as well. So you can see it's got pale stripes down its back. So they do share some of the same habitat. So again, this is a classic Azure Hawker bog pool here. So we're working quite closely with the estate, carried out training for a member of staff, and they're doing quite a lot of peatland restoration as well. So unfortunately we weren't able to visit last year, but we hope to go back again to visit other sections of the estate, because it's a massive estate, but they're very, very interested in conservation, which is great. So recording methods, well, if you want to get involved in recording dragonflies, we would be very grateful. There's still quite large areas of Scotland that don't actually have many dragonfly records. You could fill out a spreadsheet. So Pat has a spreadsheet that you can fill out. There is an iRecord app that you could use on your phone. So there's a dragonfly one which isn't very good, so don't use that. I think it was produced by the BDS, but I think it had a few problems. So use the generic iRecord app if you're recording on your phone. But also we have quite a good system on the BDS website where you can just fill out your information quite promptly. So we basically need information about who you are, what did you see, where did you see it, and when did you see it? And if you can provide a photo, that's always handy. So we can just check up on the ID if you're not 100% sure. And if you can note a few extra features and just include them in the notes, then that would be really helpful. I've been working on a spreadsheet linking our rare species to landowners so that we can get in touch with landowners and speak to them about conserving the rare species. And if we know a bit more information without having to go out there, it always makes things a bit more easy. So the surrounding vegetation, water depth, size of pond, if it's at risk of drying out, that kind of thing, because quite a few of our bog pool species, especially in hot summers, they are drying out. So looking at ways to be able to make those pools a bit more resilient in the face of climate change is one of the things we're wanting to do. So this is the iRecord app that you can have on your phone. Probably quite a few of you do already. This is the page on the website, so britishdragonflies.org.uk, and just go into recording, and it will zoom into, you can zoom into on a map to the location where you saw your dragonflies. So your records, basically, they'll be checked by Pat. They'll go into the Dragonfly Recording Network database, and then they'll go onto the MBN, Atlas of Living Scotland, so everybody can see them. And then we use them to pinpoint where the rare species are found, so we can work with the land managers for key sites. I used that information to pinpoint hotspots when I was setting up the hotspots, and they're used for producing atlases and so on as well. So all that information is really, really helpful. How can you help dragonflies? Well, if you get involved in recording, that would be absolutely fantastic. You could adopt a site or start off with casual records. If you want to adopt a site, then do get in touch with me. Obviously, ponds are fantastic places for dragonflies. If you go to the website, we have lots of information about how to dig a pond and how to manage your pond and so on. Hopefully, we'll have a number of volunteer tasks up and running again, and we'll have that information up on the website and also on social media. And I don't know when we're going to next have a dragonfly event, but we're always looking for volunteers to help out at the larger events, such as Gardening Scotland, for example. And if you can spread the word about these wonderful insects, because they do eat, obviously they are wonderful, but they do eat lots of midges and mosquitoes as well. So that's always a good thing in Scotland. So I'm here to help you. If you have a group that would like to be involved in maybe dragonfly surveying, or if you want to lead some guided walks, then get in touch and we can do some training when we're able to get out and about again. I can advise on site management for dragonflies and offer support. We've got lots of nice leaflets and so on if you want to do volunteer days or want to run some sort of event. And these are my contact details. Well, worth visiting the website. It's got lots of ID help. There's back issues of the Dragonfly News. And if you fancy joining the BDS, it's only £25 a year, and you get quite a lot for your money. You get 2 or 3 magazines a year, and yeah, you help to conserve dragonflies. So what could be better? So thank you very much for that. Thanks to Nature Scott for helping to fund my post, and I'll pass you over to Craig, who is now going to share the little film that we did for Dragonfly Week. Right, so I'll stop that.
Thanks very much, Danielle. Yeah, that was an excellent presentation. Firstly, thank you. And before I share the video, can you just remind us of the date for the BDS conference in April, for those that didn't catch that?
I think it's hold on, I shall just check I think it's the 17th.
I was going to make a note of it and then I forgot what you said.
Yeah, it's the 17th, so it's a Saturday.
17th April. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So as Danielle said, I'm now going to share a short video about dragonfly larvae identification, and then we'll start going through a few questions that have already started coming through. Okay, so bear with me one moment. Can you see that, Danielle? Oh, sorry, bear with me. I'll okay, hopefully the audio should be with this video now.
Right, hello. My name is Daniele Muir and I work for the British Dragonfly Society, and I'm here today with Paul and Isla at their pond, and we're going to be running a Dragonfly Larvae ID session. So you should be able to pick up some top tips on how to identify any larvae that you find in your pond. And Paul is going to describe to us why he loves his pond so much.
Yep, we put the pond in about 8 years ago, and we get heaps of wildlife coming. So we get all sorts of different behaviours, whether it's blackbirds washing, birds just love to wash in the shallow end, woodpeckers sometimes find themselves floundering as they're fledging in the pond, and of course we get heaps of we get lots of damselflies and dragonflies, adults, larvae, and various other critters to admire and play with.
Great stuff. So we're going to start off with doing our first dip, and we'll start our identification tips. Right, so we have found a shed skin here. So a shed skin. So when the larvae, so this is from a common hawker, and common hawkers will live underwater for 3 years or so, and in that time, as they grow bigger, they'll shed their skin and grow a new bigger skin underneath. So this is a shed skin from a common hawker. You can actually see the mask, which is what they use to catch the prey at the front. I don't know how well that's picking that up. So I know it's a common hawker because it's sort of torpedo shaped. It's got a long, slim body. You can see the 6 legs there. There's the head of the mask. The other types of dragonflies, the chasers and the darters that we would get here, they're much more squat, because they're found more on the sort of the bottom of the pond, and they need to have quite a wide shape so they don't sink down. Their bodies are covered in hair, whereas these are more ambush predators that are found in the vegetation. They dash out to catch their food, so they're much more streamlined and shaped like this. And we found an actual common hawker larva here. It's quite a dark coloured one. We're hiding under the vegetation there. Do you want to come out? Not really. We'll maybe get a spoon and put them on the white spoon so that you can get a better look. So just trying to be as gentle as possible so we don't damage it in any way. There we go. So there's our common hawker, torpedo shaped again, and they have these pale stripes going down their body too. Paul has managed to find 4 common hawkers already, and this is a different one. This is a 4-spotted chaser, and you can tell it's a 4-spotted chaser. In fact, if I can compare with the shape, can we see the hawker down there? So it's much squatter and flatter. It's got a very pointed bottom, and it has this sort of black mark going between its eyes. This is about as large as 4-spotted chasers get. I'd imagine this one would be emerging fairly soon. And yeah, so basically looking at the shape, seeing that it's much more squat than the torpedo shaped common hawker, and looking at the pointed rear end of the abdomen and the black bandit mask over the front. I'll put, let me see, so we've got another common hawker in here, which I will put back, and that's our hawker shed skin, which we want to photograph. I don't want to put them all in together because I don't want them to eat each other. Come on then, we'll put you back in. There we go. Okay.
Okay. Thanks very much for that, Danielle. Just a word about that video that I just shared. I'll post a link to that video in the meeting chat. BDS have released a few videos that Danielle features on some of them, and if not all, I don't know. There was a really interesting video from Argity that I particularly liked. Your most recent hotspot. So it's worth checking out the BDS YouTube channel as well for more of those videos. But I'll post a link to that and various others in a moment. I'll just start going through some of the questions that came through, Danielle, while you were speaking. I've got to scroll back through the meeting chat, but near the beginning of your talk, you referred to equal wings and unequal wings for differentiating damselflies and dragonflies.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on this any further?
Well, dragonflies have, I think they have two sets of wings, two pairs of wings, and the shape of the, I'll put my hands down. So the shape of the rear set of wings, they've got more of a cut off, just the section close to the abdomen, whereas damselflies, their wings are pretty much, both sets of wings are pretty much the same shape. You won't really be able to see that and if they're flying, but maybe once they come to rest, you might be able to see that in the dragonflies. You can see that the shape of the rear wings are slightly different to the forewings.
Okay, thank you. Does warmer, drier weather speed up emergence as opposed to damper and cooler weather? So more robust, quicker, and less prone to so it is more robust, quicker, and less prone to predators. I think the question is, does warmer, drier weather speed up emergence as opposed to damper and cooler weather? Yeah,
definitely. So if we have a warm spring, then the chances are that the large red damselflies will be emerging a bit earlier than if we have a cold, damp, a cold spring. So yes, as I said during the presentation, species that can take 2 years to reach to emerge here can just do it in a year in the south of England, or you can have 2 or even 3 generations in the south of France. So one of the things we can do to help dragonflies if you have a pond yourself is on the north side, which is basically the south facing edge of your pond. If you can make a nice sort of shallow ledge there, and then the dragonfly larvae will use that for sunbathing basically, and tadpoles will as well, and that can help to speed up their development a little bit. So yeah, the downside of that is that with climate change, if we're going to be having, longer, hotter summers, then it's quite likely that lots of water bodies, or some water bodies, will dry out, and that's certainly something we have to think about for our rare species like the northern emerald and the Azure Hawker, which use fairly shallow bog pools. So one of the things we're doing when we're carrying out surveys of rare species is looking at, are we going to be able to do anything to sort of try and keep the water in there in those shallower areas to hold on to these populations, because if there's dragonflies can survive short periods of drying out if they can get down into, for example, the sphagnum very low down, but if that goes on for months and months and months, then it's unlikely they'll be able to survive. So yes, warmer temperatures is good to a certain extent, but there's always the other side to the coin as well.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Bert asked, what camera equipment would you recommend for close-up images like the ones that you showed in your presentation?
Oh, they weren't, well, some of the photos were mine, and any good photos I take, I must admit, is just sheer fluke. I'm no photographer. There's probably someone might be able to answer that question who's here. I mean, I many years ago, when I worked in the Pyrenees, I had an SLR with a macro lens and extension tubes, and I was able to get good close-up pictures with that of butterflies and flowers and stuff. But I couldn't really remember what they are. But extension tubes and a good macro lens. I think when it comes to photographing dragonflies, my advice would be to get there fairly early, because when dragonflies warm up and start flying around, then obviously it's quite tricky to catch them, to get a good photograph in flight, though it obviously is possible. But if it's still quite cool, then you've probably got a better chance of photographing them when they're roosting. So that's on a summer's day, that would be quite early in the morning.
Yeah, your budget often dictates what camera equipment is best to use. I mean, for a lower cost, you can buy small compact cameras that have got excellent macro capabilities, like the Panasonic TZ70, but you can get cracking invertebrate shots with that in the right light. But an SLR is always going to give you better results if you can afford to invest a bit more in that sort of equipment. So moving on to the next question from Catherine. I created a pond last winter and have lots of dragonfly and damselfly nymphs already. Is it possible to preserve the excuvia?
Yes, well, basically I would recommend just putting them in just a small plastic container with some cotton wool, and the cotton wool will absorb any moisture, and you could replace the cotton wool after a couple of weeks maybe. But yeah, I've got a whole collection of dragonfly exuvia, all the different species, and if they're gently treated, then you can keep them for quite a length of time. So yeah, it's nice to build up that collection as well.
Deborah is asking, Danielle, can you advise who to contact regarding advice on dragonfly habitat management and surveying on Dartmoor? So,
right, well, you would contact my colleague Ellie, who's if you go onto the BDS website and look for staff contacts, you speak to Ellie Culver. So she's the conservation officer for England and Wales. So she'd be able to. There might be a local expert who might be able to help out. Certainly, Dave Smallshire. He lives in Devon, so he might be able to assist. But Ellie's your first port of call. So all her details are on the website.
Excellent. I can share a link to the BDS website in the chat in a moment as well. Kieran has asked a simple question: How do they survive during the winter?
Well, the adults they'll all die off before winter. So the first frosts tend to knock out the dragonflies. So it's rare to see them beyond October, November, certainly here. But in the winter, they go into a period of torpor. The larvae, they'll go down fairly deep so they don't freeze, though some species can survive freezing. So it's just basically the heart rate slows down, everything slows down so that they can get through the cold months without doing much in the way of feeding and just resting in torpor.
Okay, thank you. Claire, my colleague Claire in Bug Life has very kindly shared a couple of links in response to a question about any dragonfly and damselfly identification books. So thanks, Claire, for sharing those links, both available through NHBC, NHBS, and other online websites.
We do have a BDS online shop which has lots of guides, and one that I do quite like is this one, Britain's Dragonflies, a field guide to the damselflies and dragonflies of Britain and Ireland. It's a wild guide, and I think there's been a new edition just recently published. So that's got quite good ID tips on how to tell the difference between similar species as well. So quite a handy one.
Yeah, Claire's already Claire shared the link to the newer version of that. So
well done, Claire. We've got lots of nice leaflets as well. So there's quite a good Dragonflies of Scotland leaflet that you can find on the website. Normally we would send these out, but yeah, unfortunately we can't at the moment.
Yeah. Again, you can find the BDS shop on the website link, which I'll share in a moment. Emma has asked, which are more tolerant of poor water quality, Damselfly or Dragonfly?
It depends on the species, really. So common darters, they can take a bit of, they can survive in poorer quality water. I think large red can survive a bit of, you know, they're a bit less fussy. Just depends on the species. So you couldn't really say dragonfly or damselfly. There are some species that you know are very, they need to have very clean water. So so yeah, as I say, it just depends on the species.
Yeah, I'd say compared to other invertebrates, damselflies and dragonflies tend to be less tolerant of poor water quality than many others.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've just shared a link to the BDS website, which is now on the meeting chat for anybody that wants to have a look at that. I'm just scrolling back through, having some very positive comments coming through, Danielle. So
good.
echoing my thanks. Very interesting presentation. Chris has asked, how can we designate more dragonfly hotspots in England?
Well, speak to Fiona. She's working on the Dragonfly Hotspot project. So if you know of a site that's great for dragonflies, it's good for you know, it's easy access around the site, and there's, you know, communities close by that you think would be able to get involved in outreach events, then get in touch with Fiona. She's, again, her details are on the website. So she deals with the hotspot projects in England and Wales.
Brilliant. Yeah, and again, you'll be able to get her contact through the BDS website, won't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. A few comments, further comments to do with camera equipment. If I forget who asked that question, but yeah, there's some more advice on useful camera equipment. If those that are interested in photography would like to have a look at the advice that's being given there. Claire's also mentioned that the BDS Atlas is also very good, very useful.
It is. It's fantastic, easily readable. It's a nice, easy read as well, and yeah, it's got all the habitat requirements, lovely pictures. In fact, I'll go and get it so I can show it to you.
Cool.
But yes, well worth a look.
That's a lovely collection of excuviae there that Aideen has shared in a dish. Interested to know where they've been collected from. Excellent. Is that also available through your website shop?
Yeah, that's on the website shop as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, Aideen, that would be interesting to know where those excuviae came from. It's a nice little collection. So Harry Ferguson has said, if anybody has any dragonfly excuviae that they don't want or don't mind donating, please send them to the Environment Agency Ecology Lab in Nottingham. They're always appreciated. So a request there from Harry, if anybody's got excuviae they want to donate. More thanks. I'm not sure if there's any more questions there. Can you advise on pond building? Tim has asked. I mean,
yes.
There's a lot in that answer, I know.
Do it. It's the one best thing you can do for wildlife in your garden. We do have lots of, we have a really good dig a pond for dragonflies leaflet on the website, so it's worthwhile having a look at that. It has details about the design, the plants to put in, which plants to avoid, where to where to get your plants from as well. I think garden centres, you've got to be quite careful because some of them still sell like some horrendous invasive species, so just be careful where you get your plants from. But yeah, have a look at the dig a pond for dragonflies. Even a small pond, like just a tub pond made out of a large plant pot filled with water with an oxygenating plant in there and some stones so the birds can come in and have a drink or a bathe. Even that is valuable in your garden. But obviously, the bigger the pond, then the more species of dragonfly you're likely to attract. But you'll get, the chances are, if you put it in the right place, so you want it to be south facing, quite sunny for some of the day, lots of oxygenating plants, sort of shallow shell so wildlife can get in and out, sorry, shallow edges. Chances are you'll get dragonflies investigating in your first year. I mean, I have it's just an old bath that I have in my wildflower nursery, and just full of water, and I use it for storing my plants. And just the number of damselflies that were in there, and it's only a couple of meters long at the most. Yeah, it's well worth doing. You'll get lots of enjoyment out of it. There's nothing like sitting by your pond on a sunny day watching dragonflies.
Excellent, thank you. Are they susceptible? Are they more susceptible to organic or inorganic pollutants, and how much does pH affect their distribution?
I don't know how well I can really answer that question. Certainly, it all depends. I mean, I know of. I was reading about a case where lots of milk was spilt into a river, which is obviously an organic substance, and that killed off pretty much everything in the river because it took away the sort of the oxygen availability. So organic pollutants can be just as bad as inorganic. I suppose if you're putting in a pond and it's a pond that has an inflow, you really need to look at where that water's coming from. If there's going to be pollutants in there, you're probably better off digging a pond separate and just keeping an eye on the water yourself. What was the second part of the question, Craig?
How does pH affect their distribution?
pH will affect their distribution to a certain extent. Like here in Scotland, where we have quite a lot of acidic pools, then we have, that means that fish don't survive in those pools, and that's probably one of the reasons why dragonflies can do fairly well there. But they obviously they'll like it to a certain acidity, and beyond that they won't be able to survive. Exactly where that is on the pH scale, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I can find out. I can find out more about that for you, if you like.
Okay. Aideen was just saying, I don't know if can you see the meeting chat, Danielle?
No.
If you open the speech bubble, Aideen shared a picture. If you scroll back up through the meeting chat, she shared a picture of some of the excuviae she's caught, and has said that they were found in Cork in Southern Ireland. So quite a nice collection there that she's got. Nice photograph of them too.
Oh, this right. Let me see. Oh, fabulous! Yes. All right. So you've got a hawker at the top.
Common hawker.
Well, I think it's a common hawker. Yeah. I would say that's a 4-spotted chaser. That one there. That looks like an emerald damselfly. Yeah. Well, quite a collection there. I'd probably need to look at them closer to identify them all, but yeah, fantastic. Because once you get au fait with the adults, you can. It's quite a challenge to get into to get into larval ID and exuvia ID, but it's quite a rewarding challenge once you manage.
Suzanne has shared, just for those that are interested in creating pond habitats in their gardens or elsewhere, she's recommended purchasing pond plants from Danielle's own wildflower company, and her new pond is doing very well, but she shared the wrong link. So she's now shared the correct link, which is Celtica Wildflowers, Perthshire Wildlife. So the link to that shop, is that a shop, Danielle, or your website?
It's the website, yeah. Well, thanks, Suzanne. I'm glad to hear that your pond's doing well.
So the link to that is in the meeting chat for anybody that's interested in looking for plants to purchase for their new ponds. Kieran has asked, have you observed any sort of competition between dragonflies, and presumably he means damselflies rather than damselflies, but
yeah, well, dragonflies will eat damselflies. Yeah, so there will be competition. They'll compete for some of the same food, but damselflies will, they want to avoid their predators. So damselflies tend to be more, not quite as, stick more to the sort of vegetation around the side of the pond, generally speaking, not always. But yeah, it's that balance between catching their food and evading predators as with all wildlife. But yeah, there will be competition for the same food, and there's also dragonflies will eat other dragonflies as well. They're wonderful. Dragonflies are wonderful to watch hunting. So if you watch them flying around, and then you'll see them stop catching their food and then either eating it on the wing or taking it back to a perch. But they've got sort of baskets on these, their legs a bit like baskets to catch their prey. So yeah, well worth spending a bit of time just watching them hunting, even if it is hunting damselflies.
Yeah, they will predate anything really. They're voracious.
Yeah,
when they're on the wing, and as larvae as well in the ponds. That's fantastic, Danielle. Lots and lots of positive feedback coming through already. I've shared a couple of links in the meeting chat. For those of you that are still present, I would be very grateful if you could spare a couple of minutes to fill out a very short survey monkey that I've shared a link for. There's only about 4 or 5 questions in there. So yeah, it'll take you less than 2 minutes to fill in, and it'd be very helpful for us at Bug Life in terms of planning future events for you guys. And the upcoming events for Bug Life, I've also shared a link for as well to our events page. So if you want to get booked onto any of the events in the next couple of months, then I recommend you do that as soon as possible. As I said, also I've also shared a link to that video, to the YouTube video, which is on the British Dragonfly Society YouTube channel. So it's well worth checking that out, and some of the other videos that they've shared. If you want to have a look back through the presentation that Danielle gave today, then that's going to be available through the Bug Life YouTube channel that my colleague Melissa shared in the meeting chat earlier on during this event. So but you can go to YouTube and search for Bug Life and have a look at our YouTube channel, and this will shortly be available on there, as well as a whole host of other workshops that have been taking place through the winter months this year. So yeah, there's lots of content through YouTube and other resources as well if you want to have a look for more. And again, as I said, the link to the British Dragonfly Society website, particularly for their shop, but also for more advice in terms of creating your own habitat, and as and when events are able to be organized again, yeah, hopefully that won't be too long at some point this year. But yeah, I think that's all the questions that we've got for now, Danielle, but I'd be happy to take any emails if anybody else wants to ask Danielle anything else, and I can forward those emails, or you can always contact Danielle directly. She did share the her contact details at the end of her presentation there. So yeah, thank you very much, Danielle, again for your time this morning, and thanks to everybody for attending. I hope you enjoyed it, and like I said, check out the events page for future events coming up, and have a look at the YouTube channel if you want to watch this back again. Okay.
Yeah, and thanks Craig, and thanks everyone for coming along, and it's nice to see all your comments saying thanks, can't wait to get out and look for dragonflies. So yeah, I'm sure we know exactly how you feel. Yeah,
hopefully that's not going to be too long.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Bye for now.
All right, thanks Danielle. Cheers. Bye. Thanks everyone. Bye.